So in a previous video, I talked about obsessive compulsive disorder and how most people who have it have both obsessions and compulsions. And a lot of people think of those two concepts interchangeably, but they are very distinct. An obsession is an intrusive thought that pops up either on its own or by being triggered by an event or stimulus in the environment, like driving over a pothole or hearing a siren or leaving home for the day. And the thought almost always produces some anxiety. Did I hit someone with the car? Am I going to stab the dog? Is someone going to break in during the night? Now, the anxious feeling is often more of a sense of just uneasiness, like something's not quite right, something's unresolved. And therapists who treat OCD often use a kind of weird term for that feeling: just wrongness. You know that nice feeling when you've been, cleaning up the kitchen and you look at it and you're kind of satisfied? There, it's just right. My essay is done, it's printed, and it's in its folder. Just right. The car is parked exactly where I want it. Just right. It's a good and kind of comforting feeling. And obsessions bring about the opposite feeling, which is why we call it just wrongness. Usually a person's logical mind knows that the intrusive thought is meaningless. No one is going to break in through a window that is 4 inches wide. I didn't even use the stove yesterday, so I can't possibly have left it on. Or, I saw that pothole coming, so the sound under the car was the pothole, not some invisible pedestrian. But the feeling is unpleasant, and we want to make it go away. And that's where the compulsions come in. Obsessions increase our anxiety and come without us wanting them to. Compulsions are voluntary that we engage in to reduce the anxiety produced by the obsession. The compulsion, in other words, is a coping technique. If you do it right, just right, it may cause that little switch to go off in your brain, stopping the unpleasant feeling and giving you that just right feeling. Now, I say that the compulsion is voluntary. If you've been doing it for years, it may not feel quite so optional. I have to do it. I don't have a choice. Well, okay, but why do you have to? I can't feel right until I do. Well, exactly, just rightness. And that feeling is so nice that it's like a little reward. But a reward for what? For doing the compulsion. And what happens when you reward a behavior over and over and over again? It gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So the compulsions usually start out feeling voluntary. Well, I could do that. And over time, they feel more important, more compulsive. And they also tend to get more elaborate. You're cleaning the counter twice, then 3 times, then 5 times. So in this video, I really just want to give you a sense of the range of compulsions that people do. And keep in mind that OCD is incredibly idiosyncratic. No one does all of this stuff. Most people only do a subset of them. I've run a number of OCD treatment groups. Now, imagine that you're the leader of one of these things. What are you going to do in session 1? Well, you're going to get people talking. Great. Get them to introduce themselves and why they're there. And person 1 says, well, okay, I'll go. I'm always worried that I'm going to burn the house down. And so every time I leave home, I have to go back inside and pat the stove to make sure it's really off. And I unplug everything out of the wall. And person 2 says, geez, that's weird. That doesn't even occur to me. But I'm worried about break-ins. So every night before I go to bed, I have to lock the door 5 times. And there are 14 windows in my house. I know, I've counted. And I have to test every single one of them to make sure they're latched. And person 3 says, oh, I don't do any of that. But I'm always thinking I've accidentally hurt somebody. So every time the car bounces, I'm driving around the block past the same spot to see if there's a body on the road. Sometimes I have to do it twice. And person 4 says, why would you do that? It's obvious, you'd see them. I'm more worried that I'm going to do something in the future. So like, if I'm holding a knife, I think I'm just going to like stab my husband for no reason. Just, So I have to hide all the knives from myself. And everybody looks at them and they think, oh, terrific. So glad I came. And so by the end of session 1, everyone thinks they're in the wrong room because they're stuck with all these weirdos who have completely different problems than them. And it's only over time that they realize this is all the same problem. They all have intrusive thoughts, obsessions that make them anxious, and they're all doing behaviors, compulsions, to reduce that anxiety and make the thoughts shut up. But they're all doing different things. And it's so great having them in a group because they can immediately see the structure of what's going on in these other people. Then they can look back at themselves and see, wait, I'm doing exactly the same thing. Nothing to do with knives, but same thing. Okay, so what are some common compulsions? Keep in mind that I cannot possibly cover the whole waterfront on this because there are thousands of ways that this can come out. So you can account for maybe a little over half of people with OCD with this impolite term of cleaners and checkers. So we got your cleaners. Who's that? Well, these are people who have, you guessed it, elaborate cleaning rituals. Now, sometimes it's vague as to why they're doing it, what the reasoning is. But sometimes it's something pretty specific, like botulism. They're afraid that somebody's going to get botulism and the compulsion is designed to prevent that. So they might be sterilizing all the counters with bleach or running the dishwasher 3 times with the same dishes, or they might have very elaborate laundry rituals. This shirt has sleeves and my kid wipes his nose on his sleeve, so that can't go with any of my stuff, and so on. Or bathrooms. I'm going to get something off the toilet seat, so it has to be completely wiped down every time. And I would never in a million years use a hotel bathtub. Some people have whole airlock systems in their houses. When anybody comes in, they have to use the basement door, they have to take all their clothes off and put them in the laundry and put on a completely new set of indoor clothes before they touch anything. What about cleaning yourself? Excessive hand washing, Lady Macbeth, or shower rituals that can take over an hour to perform. Worrying that if you're not careful, you might miss a part, so you can't. I remember a person who had to wash their body with an elaborate counting ritual. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on. Now, also included in this group are neat people, tidiers. They're not worried about germs particularly, but it's calming to have things just so. Often they're triggered by things being off-center, so they're always straightening things. There's no clutter. There's pencils on the desk, and they're lined up from shortest to longest. When I was being trained, someone once told me that if you look at someone's closet and all their shirts point the same way, probably OCD. Well, now I do that, so it must be completely normal. Oh, and God forbid you should load their dishwasher wrong. Actually, it seems like most people have pretty rigid ideas about their dishwashers, so that's probably not a worry. Okay, so what about checkers? Well, this is all about safety, and the 2 most common are fire and intruders. If it's fire, they might be checking the stove over and over and over again, or the iron in case it's been left on. Now, in my case, if I use an iron, I always have to look again because I put it away without thinking, so I can't remember if I've done it. Now, like I said in the other video, it's really only OCD if it has a major impact on your life, like it takes an hour a day or something. Everybody, just about, has at least a little bit of it. I remember somebody who had to pull the microwave out of its little shelf to get the plug out every time he left home. He was more likely to kill himself with a falling microwave than a fire from it, but it felt really important. Now, break-ins are obvious. Everything has to be locked and secured. Now, sometimes this is about how valuables get stored, but usually it comes out with locks. So you lock your door on the way out, doesn't feel quite right, so you go back, you check it, maybe you turn the knob 3 times, get to the car, go back, check it again, and so on. It takes you forever to get going. Or you're convinced that if you don't lock your door, the moment you get home, there'll be a home invasion that minute. Now, I know I'm making some of this stuff sound silly. The thing is, it usually sounds silly to the people doing them too. Like, why am I doing all this weird stuff? There's a lot of embarrassment about OCD. What else for checking? Well, looking over emails 3 times before sending them, which is totally fine if it's a contract or something, but this is even for small stuff. Getting everything off the floor in case the dog swallows it and chokes to death. Lots of safety stuff that seems pretty obviously excessive to most people. So we've got cleaning and checking, but there are lots of other types of compulsions as well. One category we might call superstitious in nature, like where the behavior and the outcome that you're trying to prevent or bring about seem pretty unrelated, like having to have the right socks on in order to write an exam, or counting backwards by 7s whenever you see the name Sam, right? Or avoiding stepping on cracks in the sidewalk so that nobody gets in a car accident. Or having a bad thought pop into your head, like an image of your sister in hospital, and having to redo what you just did without that image before it can feel right. So, for example, if you're drinking a bit of water and you have that thought, you might have to create an image of your sister in perfect health and hold it there and while you repeat the task. And then it's okay. Now that one sounds specific, but it's actually pretty common. Or having an unpleasant thought and undoing it by saying a prayer exactly perfectly. No stumbling. In the obsessions video, I gave the example of straight men, most often men, who get intrusive thoughts that maybe they're gay. And these are guys who, like, not gay. Really common. So what do? It varies, but maybe they can't go through the gay part of town, right? Not allowed. Or they can't use changing rooms at the gym in case they get turned on by the naked men there. Or they can't look at the underwear boxes in the store. They have to get somebody else to buy underwear for them. Or when they see a good-looking man, they check to make sure that they're not getting turned on. Oh, impulse control ones. Like the people they think they're going to stab the dog, right? They may hide all the knives or lock the dog in another room while they make dinner. No knife blocks in those houses. Or what about the people who are like, I'm going to throw the baby, so they cannot hold the baby anywhere near the stairs or anywhere near open windows or traffic? And again, this isn't when they've been totally sleep deprived and stressed out and the baby's been screaming for 10 hours. This is all the time. What about the fear of heights ones? Well, I'm going to throw myself off the balcony even though I'm not depressed, I'm not suicidal. I just might do it for no reason at all. Well, they might avoid going any place above the 2nd floor. They might never walk across bridges, stuff like that. Again, this one is a bit debatable whether we might call it specific phobia or OCD. Symmetry. Symmetry is another issue. Some people are really upset by things not being perfectly symmetrical from left to right. So that might involve clothes, right? I have to wear socks that are flawlessly matched with the same amount of fading, right? But more often, it's your actual body. People heavily into fitness often have trouble here, like making sure their measurements are exactly the same, right and left. Or that things like their eyebrows are exactly the same. And they can spend hours trying to get things exactly right. So that's a long list, but the variety is just about endless. There are lots of types of compulsions I haven't mentioned. What almost all of them share is that they're designed to reduce anxiety and bring about a feeling of just rightness. But the more you do them, the more important they begin to feel, and the more elaborate they can get. What starts as a quick check can become an hour-long ritual. And although they work in the short term, doing them really does decrease the anxiety. In the long run, they result in the obsessions becoming more common. So the person's life can get more and more preoccupied with carrying out meaningless rituals, and the anxiety overall can go up and up and up. Well, great. So what do we do about it? Well, if you watch a lot of these videos, you know what I'm going to say. YouTube is not therapy. It's not a substitute for careful assessment and therapy carried out by a registered healthcare professional. So if anything I've said causes concern, check it out with somebody who can talk about your particular situation. What I can do is sketch out some of the most common approaches that we use in treatment. And I'll do that in upcoming posts.